everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. This is going to be our next how-to video. It's by a gentleman by the name of Jerry Pauwe. I think it is. It's P-A-A-U-W-E. And he wrote to me and he said, it sounds strange, but one thing I've always struggled with is proper maintenance of engines. Maybe you could run through some gentle and effective way of getting the wheels clean and how to keep the locomotive lubed up. Thanks for your YouTube channel and keep those updates coming. Okay, we're going to do that right now, and I thank Jerry for sending this in, and let's get started with this. Okay guys, the basics, I wrote down a list here of the basics that I think one should do from the time a locomotive is new, or this can also apply once you have the locomotive and you've been running it and you're running into some issues, okay? So basically what I normally do is I start by breaking in a locomotive. If it's a new locomotive, it needs to be broken in, okay? I find that when we test locomotives on a test track here, some of them run beautifully right out of the box, but then we have some that really need to be run for a considerable amount of time in some cases to get them to run very smoothly. So my method is I put them on the test track. All we have is a 24-inch circle, and I will let mine run in forward at full throttle for about 15 minutes. Then I'll come in there and I'll put it in full throttle in reverse and run it for about another 15 minutes. And you guys know that different manufacturers of different locomotives run at different speeds. I find a lot of times that the Atlas and Intermountain, for instance, and maybe Fox Valley and some of those, they start off a little bit slow because they haven't been run in at all. I don't know how Kato accomplishes a very smooth running locomotive right off the bat, but nevertheless, if you run them for 15 minutes in either direction, it should be enough time to sufficiently run those gears in. And the reason I say both directions is it's very important that your locomotive run good in forward and backward. So when you get a locomotive out on the track, always remember to once in a while, if you consist with other locomotives, to turn around and run it the backwards direction once in a while. Because after years of operation, I've found out that if you run it the same direction all the time, they'll get worn in that way, and then they don't run worth a darn backwards when you have to use them that way. So that's the first thing. Let's move on to number two. Okay guys, number two, what I would recommend is before you even bother cleaning the locomotive or anything, if it's running poorly or whatever, the first thing you want to check is to make sure the wheels are clean. And also don't forget your track. We're not going to go into track cleaning today per se. This has become one of my new favorites. I use the vacuum function on it to pick up loose material on the track with the vacuum. And the CMX cleaning car I find is now my favorite for using any kind of liquids on the pad here. I'm not going to go into those, but those are the two methods that I use to clean track. But make sure your track is clean before you blame a locomotive on its running problems. The next thing is, there's kind of three main types, I guess. There's probably more out there. You can clean them by hand, of course, with a regular cleaning block. But most methods that guys use are, and this is my favorite, the Trix wheel cleaner. You can see that it's got little bristles on it. You set it on the track, it conducts electricity up through the bristles, and you just run the locomotive on the bristles to clean the wheels. A lot of guys don't like this wheel cleaner because they say it eats the nickel silver off the wheels. I have locomotives out here that are 20 years old and they still have nickel on the wheels, and I use it all the time. So I don't know. I mean, you know, if you're paranoid about it, then don't use it. There's a new type that I kind of think is pretty cool. It's the Tidy Track one from Woodland Scenics. And basically, this one also, hold on, let me find my place to put my paper. This one here is kind of interesting. You can set it on the track and it will pick up electricity here and here and here, or you can use this plug-in cable and attach it to the two tracks. And there's a little metal ridge on the inside of this lip here, and the wheels will contact that, and you can put a cleaning solution on these pads right here and let the locomotive go up here and butt against the end and let it run on these cleaning pads. While I think this is a good idea for a track cleaning tool, I personally don't use it too much because I notice that I can pull these fibers out of these little pads here. I don't like anything that has loose fibers. They're probably not going to get sucked up in the gears because you've got this plastic piece in the middle here, but this system works pretty well, and it's not like running it on carpet or anything, you know, so you could probably get by with this and it would be fine. So this is another method of cleaning wheels. One of the all-time favorites is this happens to be a fiber optic cleaning pad. It's a paper pad loaded with alcohol. But a lot of guys just take a piece of a regular old t-shirt, cut it up, lay it over the track, soak it with a little alcohol on it, run one end of the locomotive on it, scrub it back and forth, and you will see the black stuff come off the wheels, and then rub the other end on it and do the same thing. This particular pad is what I use just because I have a bunch of them. I basically open up the pad like so, lay it across the track, put the wheel on it, put the wheels on it, let the locomotive one end of it run, turn it around, let the locomotive run on the other end. And that should really clean up your wheels. You shouldn't see any debris on the wheels. They should be glossy, shiny, no black. I mean, there's going to be black no matter what you do coming off on the pad, no matter how long you run it on there. But you don't want to see any gunky black stuff on the wheels. Okay? Another thing to do is visibly look for any lint and so forth on the gears of the locomotive while you're looking at the trucks. And let's move on to the next segment, segment 3. Okay, segment 3, the next thing that I think is very important before we actually get into taking the locomotive apart is make sure you have a microtrains coupler gauge, height gauge, handy. And before you even bother cleaning it, grab your handy dandy gauge, and if you don't have one, you need one. When you put the locomotive on the track, make sure that when it's on the track and it comes together that those coupler heights match. Okay? If they're off, you're going to have uncoupling problems, you're going to have problems all around the layout. You might as well not even clean the locomotive because you're just going to have nothing but problems. So check the coupler height gauge next. Let's move on to the next item. Okay guys, here's the next thing I would do. This is a customer locomotive that was just sent to me. It appears to be, well, I know it's an older, I think, Cato E89. I did notice, and I don't know, it's probably not showing up on the camera, but there is a lot of fuzz hanging down from the wheels and trucks on this thing. I may have to take the trucks entirely apart to clean the fuzz out of there because someone has lubricated these gears. And I'm going to go into that later. Some of you that have watched another video that I've done on locomotive cleaning, I don't recommend lubricating gears. But nevertheless, this is about shell removal. This particular shell, this E8 shell, can be removed real easily without removing a coupler. F7s, you have to kind of jiggle the coupler through the body shell. Intermountain locomotives, you have to remove the front coupler on an F unit before you can get it out. Most of the modern locomotives, the shell, once you pull the shell, the two sides of the shell apart, it'll come apart. There's a couple of videos out there on the net where the guys take the shell, put the end of the shell on its plastic box and drop it. Not drop it, but they tilt it up, let go of it. It falls. The pilot hits the top of the box, and it just jars the guts of the locomotive basically out, and that's an easy way. I recommend get on YouTube and look at ways to remove body shells. You'll find an infinite number of ways. You can look up Google. The GG1 units require 4 toothpicks in them to make sure you get them out correctly. There's any number of ways to remove shells on any given particular locomotive. This locomotive, all you do is you stick your fingernails under each side, separate it, pull it to each side, and the chassis drops right out. I am surprised this is a DCC ready one, but nevertheless, a visual inspection is really what you want to do. And in looking at the inside of this one and looking down in the gears, it looks like it's got the normal amount of lubrication, which means not overly lubed. But that's basically getting the shell off. And now we're going to go to the next segment and show you how to lubricate and what the lubrication points are on a particular locomotive similar to this. Okay guys, here is the inside of our E8 unit. I have removed the circuit board and the clips that go over the trucks and so forth. But I just want to show you the points, the only points that I recommend, and this is just my preference, but I recommend lubing, is each end of the worm gear, there and there, the end of the motor gear or motor bearing in between the flywheel, right in there, the other end of the motor between the flywheel, right there, and each end of this worm gear, there and there. And I'm not going to lube this one because I got to take it apart and clean it up a little bit because I don't know, somebody put a lot of grease on the trucks of it, so I'm going to have to clean the trucks. I'm going to pop the trucks off and let you take a look and show you what I would and wouldn't do. Okay guys, here's our E-unit truck. I don't know if this close-up shows there's a little bit of fuzz in there. And you can see that there is a considerable amount of grease on the gearbox bottom. And what it would appear is that this thing started running a little rough or something, and nobody ever wants to take a locomotive apart, so the first thing they do is put a bunch of grease or oil on these gears and hope that it works up into the chassis. It never works. Because you can see the top gears are pretty dry. It is a little bit stiff, and like I say, because this one has some fuzz in it, I'm going to wind up taking the truck apart, and you can see that I can get, once I pull the truck down here, actually let me pull both sides of it down here and see if I can get this off of here without losing a bunch of parts on camera here. Once you get the bottom of the truck off, this is what you wind up with. You can see that there's fuzz in there. What I want to make sure of, and as you can see in this picture, there is a bunch of black grease and fuzz in each one of those bearing caps. In fact, they're totally black. We need to get that out of there because that leads to non-conductivity between the axle end and this piece of pickup strip that goes up to and contacts your board. So basically I take a Q-tip with alcohol and clean these out with a toothpick too. Make sure they're real nice and clean. I would go back here, pull any unwanted fuzz off of the axle ends if there was any, and actually the axle ends look pretty good, but I would take the same Q-tip and wipe the axle ends, and I would do that on both sides. And uno momento por favor. Once you've done that, you can put the two sides back on like so. There's little tabs that they fit in. Once you get that done, obviously we would have to clean the grease out of the bottom of this. And then this thing would just slip right back down in there. Have to make sure that your gears are on the proper side to be in the gear holes here on the bottom. And just snap it back in place. And then your truck's back together and you've cleaned and made good conductivity out of those axle ends. Never lube those axle ends on at least Cato locomotives and most of the modern locomotives. The gears in there are Delrin. They don't need this lubricant. And what happens is the carrier in that lubricant dries out and then it becomes real sticky. In fact, this one turns really hard. So that's not a good sign. But I'll get this one cleaned up. But that's basically the method that I use to take the truck apart, and most trucks are very similar to this, not all of them, but once you get the locomotive apart you'll be able to see how it goes together or how it comes apart. But never guys, really in my opinion, use grease on these things. They don't need to be greased. The Delrin is a slick plastic material, that's why they use it, and that's why there's no lube on it when you get it. Once that's done and you clean both trucks can go back on the frame. You've already lubricated both ends of each one of the worm gears and both ends of each end of the motor here. You can put all your pieces back in, put your trucks back on, and you're off and ready to go. And once I get this locomotive cleaned up, we're going to come back and test run it. Okay guys, I got inside and I started cleaning this thing, and I realized maybe I need to show you what I need to do, but I need to pick lint. It's usually wrapped around the axles right in here or around the ends here. The ends you just pull it off of, but these axles you kind of have to pull it out with a pair of tweezers. And if you can't get it out of there and you have grease on it like this one has, I would take it inside, put it in soapy water, and brush the whole thing with a toothbrush and clean all the grease and stuff off it, which I'm going to have to do with this one when I get it inside. But this particular, the particular axle that I just dropped on the floor had that wad of lint on it. Now you get that wad of lint on each one of those axles and they're not going to turn in there freely, okay? So try and keep your locomotives away from lint. Don't grease the axles, because this is the kind of stuff it picks up, along with ballast and so forth. That's another thing to check when you get in there. Start looking at the gears, make sure there's no ballast in the gears and so forth. And here is one of the pickup strips, and you can see that I've actually cleaned this hole, and you can see how black this hole is. You want them all nice and clean like this one, and then reassemble the whole truck, and you'll be on the way. I'm going to go finish this one up and we'll test it. Okay guys, here we are on the test track after the cleaning, and I've got it running at slow speed, and you can see that we don't have any light blinking, which means we're making good contact. If I run the locomotive up, it's running smooth, no binding, although I do want to show you something here. Lighting's not too good in here, but on this particular one, the circuit board was bent up on each end, and so I had to put some Kapton tape over it to hold it down firm against the contact strips there. That's another thing you might keep in mind. There's always a little quirk on some of these. You will notice that the wheels are nice and bright and shiny now. I cleaned them on the Rix cleaner, and this locomotive, except for putting the shell back on, is pretty much done with its maintenance. Okay guys, there she is, all ready to go. Shell back on, wheels all cleaned, lint all removed, lubricated in the 6 points that I recommended. And as you can see in the background, I used the Labelle 108 light multi-purpose plastic compatible lube. I don't like heavy lubes. And that's pretty much it on loco maintenance. From this point forward, once you've done this, you should be good for a few years other than wheel cleaning. And like I say, these two devices right here are excellent choices for wheel cleaning, as well as a small piece of cotton across the track and running the wheels on it. Aside from that, that's pretty much it. Okay guys, there you have it. I want to thank Jerry for sending this in. Robin picked it out in random, and I think we've covered everything. Remember, break in, clean the wheels first, whatever method you like to do, and don't forget to make sure your track is clean. It may not be a locomotive problem. Coupler height, check it. Shell removal, we went over that just slightly. There's all different kinds of shell removals. The lube points, there's basically 6 on every locomotive, each end of the motor, and then each end of each one of the worm gears. And then testing, and I covered the cleaning of the contacts and so forth on the locomotives. Anything you see that looks like it might be too much lube or not enough lube, either lube it or remove some, because you know, they can be over lubed, and a lot of locomotives are over lubed. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. And don't mind my black finger, but anyway, see you on the next one. You guys take care.